Manhattan Corner Brew Cafe, 7:30 a.m. Emma Blake was having the worst day of her life, and it wasn't even 8 in the morning yet. First, the subway broke down at 42nd Street. Then, every taxi was occupied during rush hour. Now, running to make the meeting that could save her small digital marketing agency from bankruptcy, she crashed into the most infuriating man in the universe. Sorry, she started trying to balance her briefcase, phone, and the coffees she'd bought to impress potential clients. You shouldn't be running in a public space, the man said, adjusting his Armani tie with an air of superiority that made Emma want to shove his head in a trash can. You could have hurt me. Emma stared at him. Impeccable suit, Rolex that probably cost more than her 6-month rent, and that expression of someone who'd never worked a day in his life. Hurt you? I barely touched you, Prince Charming. Prince Charming, he arched a perfectly groomed eyebrow. Do you know who you're talking to? Someone who clearly needs a reality check. The man gave her a condescending smile that made Emma's blood boil. Look, sweetheart, I understand you're nervous being in the presence of smack. The slap echoed through the entire cafe. Customers stopped sipping their lattes. The barista dropped a quiescent. Emma had just slapped a complete stranger across the face. Nobody calls me sweetheart, you arrogant jerk. The man touched his face, more shocked than hurt. For the first time in his life, Carter Wellington, heir to a luxury resort empire, man who graced Forbes covers annually, was completely speechless. And then something happened that had never happened before. He laughed, a genuine laugh, not the polite chuckle he used at Park Avenue business dinners. You, he said, still holding his face, you actually slapped me. And I'd do it again if necessary? Emma shot back, adjusting her bag on her shoulder with impressive dignity for someone who'd just committed assault in public. Carter watched her walk away, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor with determination, wavy hair bouncing, posture straight despite the obvious chaos of her morning. It had been years since anyone treated him like a normal human being, decades since anyone challenged him, and no woman had ever been so real with him. Excuse me, he called out, catching up to her at the door. I deserve that. Let me buy your coffee. Emma turned around, her brown eyes still sparking with anger. I don't want your charity. It's not charity. It's an apology. She studied him for a long moment. Something was different in his expression now. Less arrogance, more curiosity. Your face is red, she said, and for the first time showed something that might be a smile. You have a strong hand. Kickboxing classes for dealing with men like you. Carter laughed again. Emma Blake, she finally said, extending her hand. And you are Carter, he replied, shaking her hand and feeling an electric current run up his arm. Carter Wellington. Emma's smile disappeared instantly. Wellington, like the resorts. Exactly like the resorts. And that's when Emma realized she had slapped the richest and probably most powerful man in New York. Shoot, she muttered. Language, sweetheart, Carter said with a mischievous smile. Emma raised her hand again, threatening another slap, and he backed away, laughing. Neither of them imagined that moment would change their lives forever. Wellington Enterprises Tower. Same day, 2:00 p.m. Emma sat in the marble and gold lobby of Wellington Enterprises, feeling like Alice, who'd tumbled down the wrong rabbit hole. The morning's coffee shop incident played on repeat in her mind. She'd slapped Carter Wellington. Carter Wellington. The man owned half of Manhattan's luxury hospitality industry. Her phone buzzed with another text from her business partner. Please tell me you didn't actually assault our potential investor. Maya had always been the voice of reason between them. Miss Blake, a woman in an impossibly crisp Chanel suit, approached. Mr. Wellington will see you now. The elevator ride to the 52nd floor felt like ascending to Mount Olympus. Emma caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. Her wavy hair had given up any pretense of professionalism hours ago, and there was a coffee stain on her blazer that she'd tried to hide with a strategically placed scarf. She looked like what she was, a small business owner barely keeping her head above water in the most expensive city in America. The elevator chimed, and the doors opened to reveal a corner office that could house her entire Brooklyn apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Manhattan stretching endlessly below. Carter stood with his back to her, hands clasped behind him, looking every inch the corporate prince. "You came," he said without turning around. "Did I have a choice? Your assistant was very persuasive." He turned then, and Emma was struck again by how unfairly handsome he was. The red mark from her slap had faded, but she could swear she saw amusement dancing in his green eyes. "Please sit." He gestured to a leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly revenue. "I'm not here to gravel if that's what you're expecting." "Good. I hate graveling. Coffee. I've had enough coffee drama for one day." "Thanks." Emma remained standing, arms crossed. "What do you want, Carter?" He smiled at her use of his first name. "No, Mr. Wellington, no difference." Just his name, like he was a regular person. "I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. I need a girlfriend." Emma blinked. "Come again. Not a real girlfriend, a fake one for appearances." Carter walked to his desk, picked up a tablet, and showed her a business magazine cover. His photo dominated the page with the headline, "Manhattan's Most Eligible Bachelor. Why won't he commit? My board of directors thinks I'm irresponsible, a playboy who can't be trusted with the family legacy. They want me to prove I'm mature enough to take over as CEO when my father retires next year. So get a real girlfriend. I don't have time for real relationships. They're complicated." Emma laughed a sharp sound, "and fake ones aren't. We'd have clear boundaries, a contract. You attend a few events with me, meet my family, convince everyone I'm capable of commitment in return." He slid a paper across the desk. Emma's eyes widened at the figure. "This is enough to save your agency, pay your employees for a year, and give you the financial freedom to expand into the luxury market." She looked up at him. "Why me? You could hire any model, any socialite, because you slapped me. That's your criteria for fake dating, physical violence. You treated me like a normal person. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Carter's voice carried a note of something she couldn't identify. Loneliness. "Maybe everyone else either wants something from me or is intimidated by my family name. You just saw an arrogant guy who needed to be put in his place." Emma stared at him for a long moment. "You're serious? Dead serious? What would this entail exactly?" "A few dinner dates where we'll conveniently be photographed. The Metropolitan Museum gala next weekend. Meeting my family at our Hampton house for Sunday brunch, maybe 3 months total. And you think people will believe we're together? We're from completely different worlds. Opposites attract. Besides, the best performances are built on truth." "And the truth is, you intrigue me." Something in his tone made her heart skip. "Carter, look, I know it sounds crazy, but you need the money, and I need to convince my board I'm not the irresponsible heir they think I am. It's a business arrangement that benefits us both." Emma walked to the window, looking down at the city sprawling below. From up here, her problems seemed microscopic. Her struggling agency, her overdue rent, her employees who counted on her to keep their health insurance active. "What happens when it ends?" she asked quietly. "We break up amicably. You keep the money, I get control of my company, everyone wins." She turned back to him. "And if we get caught in the lie, we won't." "How can you be so confident?" Carter smiled, and for a moment she glimpsed the man behind the corporate facade. "Because you're the most authentic person I've met in years. If anyone can make this convincing, it's you." Emma picked up the contract, scanning the terms. It was generous, almost too generous. There had to be a catch. "Why do I feel like I'm making a deal with the devil?" Because you probably are. His grin was absolutely wicked. So, Emma Blake, will you be my fake girlfriend? She looked at him. Really, looked. Behind the confidence and designer suits, she saw the weight of family expectations. The loneliness of never knowing if people liked him for who he was or what he could give them. And maybe, just maybe, she saw someone who needed saving as much as she did. I have conditions, name them, no touching without permission, no surprises that could embarrass me publicly. And if you ever call me sweetheart again in that condescending tone, I'll do more than slap you. Carter laughed, extending his hand. Deal? As their hands met, Emma couldn't shake the feeling she'd just stepped onto a roller coaster. She just hoped she could hold on for the ride. There's one more thing, Carter said, his hand still holding hers. We start tonight. There's a charity dinner at the plaza. Black tie. Emma's stomach dropped. Tonight, Carter, I don't have anything to wear to a plaza charity dinner. Already handled. He pressed a business card into her palm. Bergdorf's personal shopping department. They're expecting you at 4. Everything's taken care of. You were that sure I'd say yes. I was that hopeful you would. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. For just a moment, the billionaire facade slipped, and she saw the man underneath, vulnerable, hopeful, maybe even a little scared. Don't make me regret this, Wellington. I'll do my best, Blake. As Emma left his office, contracts signed and mind spinning, she wondered what she'd just gotten herself into. Behind her, Carter watched through the floor, toe-sailing windows, as she emerged onto the street 52 floors below. A small figure navigating the Manhattan crowds. For the first time in months, he felt something he'd almost forgotten. Anticipation. Tonight, the performance would begin. The Plaza Hotel. Same evening, 700 p.m. Emma stood outside the Plaza Hotel, questioning every life choice that had led her to this moment. The midnight blue Valentino gown that Carter's personal shopper had selected fit like it was made for her, but she felt like an actress wearing a costume for a role she didn't understand. The dress probably cost more than her rent. The shoes definitely did. Deep breaths, she murmured to herself, watching black cars drop off Manhattan's elite. It's just dinner with photographers and New York's most powerful people watching your every move. No pressure at all. You look absolutely stunning. She turned to find Carter approaching, and her breath caught. He looked devastatingly handsome in a classic black tuxedo, but it was his smile that made her heart skip. Warm and genuine, nothing like the polished charm she'd expected. You clean up pretty well yourself, she said, accepting his offered arm and trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened at his touch. Shall we give them a show? The hotel's entrance was lined with photographers, just as Carter had predicted. Emma felt herself tense, but his hand covered hers reassuringly. Just be yourself, he whispered close to her ear, his breath warm against her skin. That's all I need. The camera flashes began the moment they stepped out of the black town car. Emma forced herself to smile, but it felt awkward and artificial until Carter leaned down and said quietly, "You have something in your hair." "I do not." She protested automatically, reaching up self-consciously. "Made you smile naturally," he said with a boyish grin, gently pretending to remove something. "Perfect." The cameras captured the moment, her genuine laughter, his tender gesture, the way they looked at each other like no one else existed. It looked exactly like two people falling in love. Inside the ballroom was a symphony of crystal chandeliers, white orchids, and the kind of wealth that whispered rather than shouted. Emma recognized several faces from business magazines and society pages. These people moved in circles so far above hers they might as well have been from another planet. Mr. Wellington, a woman in enough diamonds to fund a small country, glided over. "You simply must introduce me to your enchanting companion, Victoria Ashford. Meet Emma Blake. Emma Victoria chairs the Children's Hospital Board Emma extended her hand graciously. "It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Ashford. The work you do for children's health care is incredible." Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly. "You're familiar with our organization. My little sister was treated at Children's Hospital when she was 7. The staff there saved her life." Emma's voice was warm with genuine gratitude. "I've been donating what I can ever since." Something shifted in Victoria's expression, surprise giving way to genuine interest. "How refreshing to meet someone who understands our mission personally." "What do you do, dear?" "I run a digital marketing agency. We specialize in helping small businesses compete with larger corporations." "How fascinating. You must tell me more about it." As Victoria engaged Emma in animated conversation about her business, Carter watched with growing admiration. Emma wasn't trying to impress anyone or name-drop her way into acceptance. She was simply being herself, passionate, intelligent, genuine. "Your girlfriend is lovely," Victoria said quietly to Carter when Emma stepped away to check her phone. "She's nothing like your usual type." "What's my usual type?" "Beautiful but vapid, wealthy but entitled." Emma is Victoria paused, choosing her words carefully. "She's substantial. Don't lose this one, Carter." Before he could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. A stunning red head in a dress that belonged more on a red carpet than at a charity dinner swept into the ballroom, followed by her usual entourage of socialites and photographers. Carter's entire demeanor changed, his jaw tightened, and Emma felt him withdraw even though he hadn't moved an inch. Ex-girlfriend, she guessed, returning to his side. Worse, ex-fiancé. The redhead, Scarlett Hamilton, Emma remembered from the gossip columns, spotted them across the room and made a beeline for their table. Her smile was perfectly practiced and completely predatory. "Carter, what a delicious surprise." Her eyes swept over Emma with the precision of a jewelry appraiser evaluating a questionable diamond. "And who is this charming creature?" "Scarlett." Carter's voice was carefully neutral. "Emma, meet Scarlett Hamilton." "Scarlett Emma Blake." Scarlett tapped her perfectly manicured finger against her glossy lips. "I'm sorry, I don't recognize the family name. Are you in real estate fashion? Your people must be in something significant for Carter to be seen with you at an event of this caliber." The insult was delivered with such sweetly venomous precision that Emma almost admired the artistry of it. "Almost, actually," Emma said with her brightest smile. "I'm nobody particularly important. Just a middle-class girl from Brooklyn who runs a small business and drives a Honda that's older than some of the wine being served tonight." Carter finds my complete lack of social pedigree refreshing, apparently. Scarlett's smile faltered. She clearly hadn't expected Emma to own her ordinariness so boldly and without shame. "How quaint." Scarlett's voice dripped with condescension. Carter always did enjoy his little experiments. "Is that what you were?" Emma asked with innocent curiosity. "An experiment." Carter nearly choked on his champagne. Scarlett's face went through several interesting shades of pink. "Well," she said tightly, her composure cracking just slightly, "enjoy your little adventure, Carter. We all know how these fascinating diversions typically end." After she glided away with her entourage in tow, Carter stared at Emma with something approaching awe. "Did you just completely dismantle your ex-fiancé with honesty and self-deprecating humor?" "Yeah, I think I did." Emma took a sip of her champagne, rather pleased with herself. That was completely inappropriate for high society. "I know, I warned you. I'm not good at this whole elite social thing." It was magnificent. Carter's smile was brilliant and genuine. "I don't think anyone has ever stood up to Scarlett like that. She's used to intimidating people with her family name and social connections." "Why did you get engaged to her in the first place?" Carter's smile faded slightly. "Because it made perfect sense on paper. Our families have known each other for generations. Our business interests aligned beautifully. Our social circles overlapped completely. We were what everyone called the ideal power couple, and in reality, I felt like I was slowly suffocating. He met her eyes. She never would have slapped me in a coffee shop. Most rational people wouldn't slap strangers in coffee shops. Maybe, but you saw right through all the superficial nonsense and called me out for being a pompous jerk. When was the last time someone did that to me? He paused, considering. Actually, when was the first time someone did that to me? Emma studied his face in the soft ballroom lighting. It must be lonely having everyone treat you like you're untouchable. You have no idea. The orchestra began playing, and couples moved toward the dance floor. Carter stood and offered his hand. Care to dance, Ms. Blake? I should probably warn you. I learned to dance at my cousin's quinceañera, not cotillion. Even better. As they moved onto the dance floor, Emma was surprised by how naturally she fit into Carter's arms. He was an excellent dancer, leading her through the waltz with easy confidence. You're full of surprises, she said as he spun her gracefully. So are you. Victoria Ashford doesn't give her approval lightly. She genuinely likes you. She's easier to talk to than your ex-fiancé. Most people are. Carter's hand tightened slightly on her waist. Can I ask you something? Shoot. Your sister, the one who was treated at Children's Hospital, is she okay now? Emma's expression softened. She's perfect. Studying premed at Columbia. Actually wants to be a pediatric surgeon because of her experience there. She says someone saved her life when she was 7. So now she wants to spend her life returning the favor. Carter was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke his voice was unusually thoughtful. That's beautiful. She's pretty amazing. Emma looked up at him. Why do you ask? Just trying to understand what makes you tick. You're not like anyone I've ever met. Is that good or bad? It's terrifying, he said honestly, and completely fascinating. The song ended, but they remained in each other's arms for a moment longer than necessary. Around them, the charity dinner continued. Speeches were made, donations were pledged, and New York's elite patted themselves on the back for their generosity. But Emma was only aware of Carter's green eyes looking down at her, like she was the most interesting person in the room. We should probably, she began. Probably, he agreed, but neither of them moved. Carter, Emma. A photographer appeared beside them. Mind if I get a shot for the Times Society page? They posed, Carter's arm around Emma's waist, her hand resting on his chest. To anyone watching, they looked like a couple completely smitten with each other. The terrifying part was how easy it felt to pretend. As they smiled for the camera, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere between the coffee shop slap and this moment, the lines between performance and reality had started to blur. And judging by the way Carter was looking at her, she wasn't the only one feeling it. Wellington Estate, East Hampton. 2 weeks later, Emma stared at the Wellington family estate through the passenger window of Carter's Aston Martin, and wondered if she'd somehow driven into a movie set. The sprawling mansion looked like something from The Great Gatsby. All white columns, manicured lawns, and the kind of old money elegance that whispered power across generations. You grew up here, she asked, trying to keep the awe out of her voice. Summers and weekends, Carter replied, his hands tightening slightly on the steering wheel. The main family house is in the Upper East Side, right, of course, the summer house. Emma shook her head. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. Our idea of a summer house was opening the fire escape window. Carter glanced at her, and she caught something vulnerable in his expression. Were you happy growing up in Brooklyn? The question surprised her. Yeah, actually I was. My parents worked hard, but we had family dinners every night, game nights on weekends. My mom would blast salsa music while she cooked, and my dad would dance with her in the kitchen. She paused. "Were you happy?" "I mean," Carter was quiet for a long moment. "I don't think I knew what happy was supposed to feel like. I knew successful, accomplished, appropriate, but happy." He shrugged. "That wasn't really the point." Emma felt something tighten in her chest. Before she could respond, the front door of the mansion opened, and a woman who could only be Carter's mother emerged. Patricia Wellington was exactly what Emma had expected. Perfectly coiffed blonde hair, pearl necklace, and an expression that could cut glass at 50 paces. "Showtime," Carter murmured, getting out to open Emma's door. "Remember," Emma whispered as he helped her out, "I'm your girlfriend who makes you laugh and brings out your human side." "Right. And you're the woman who sees past the money to the devastatingly charming man beneath. Let's not oversell it." Carter's laugh was genuine, and Emma felt some of her nervousness ease. They could do this. "It was just a performance, Carter, darling." Patricia Wellington's voice carried the kind of cultured authority that suggested she'd been chairing charity committees since birth. She offered her cheek for a kiss, her eyes already assessing Emma with surgical precision. "Mother, I'd like you to meet Emma Blake." "Emma, this is my mother, Patricia Wellington. Mrs. Wellington, it's such a pleasure to meet you." Emma extended her hand with a warm smile. "Thank you so much for including me in your family brunch." Patricia's handshake was brief and cool. How refreshing. Carter so rarely brings anyone to meet the family. Her tone suggested this wasn't necessarily a good thing. "You must be very special." "I certainly think so," Carter said, his arms sliding around Emma's waist with practiced ease. "Emma runs her own digital marketing company. She's brilliant. How industrious." Patricia's smile was polite, but didn't reach her eyes. "And your family, are they also in business?" Emma felt the weight of the question, the subtle probe into her social standing, her worthiness to be in their world. "My father is a high school history teacher, and my mother manages a community center in Brooklyn. They are both retired now, but they taught me the value of hard work and treating people with kindness, regardless of their circumstances." Patricia's expression didn't change, but Emma caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Strike one for the middle-class girl. How grounded of them. "Well, come along. The others are waiting on the terrace." As they walked through the mansion, Emma tried not to gawk at the artwork that probably belonged in museums and the furniture that was definitely older than her entire family line. Carter's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "You're doing great," he whispered. The terrace overlooked the Atlantic Ocean, and Emma had to admit the view was spectacular. A table was set for 6, with what looked like actual silver and china that probably cost more than her car. "Carter," a booming voice called out, and a man who was clearly Carter's father approached with a golf club still in hand. Richard Wellington was silver-haired, distinguished, and had the kind of presence that suggested he was used to being the most important person in any room. "Dad," Carter's posture straightened slightly. "This is Emma Blake." "Emma, my father, Richard Wellington." Richard's handshake was firm, his assessment quick but thorough. "Blake can't say I'm familiar with the name." "What business is your family in?" "Education and social services," Emma replied smoothly. "Nothing as impressive as hospitality empires, but we're proud of the work we do." Richard's eyebrows rose slightly. Admirable public service. Before Emma could respond, a younger voice interrupted. "So this is the famous Emma." A woman about Emma's age bounded over with the kind of enthusiasm that seemed genuine. She had Carter's green eyes but softer features, and her smile was warm and welcoming. "Grace," Carter said with obvious affection. "Meet Emma. Emma, my sister Grace, fair warning. She's the family interrogator." "Only because I actually care about your happiness," Grace said, giving Emma a quick but thorough hug. "Unlike some people who shall remain nameless." but are currently glaring at us from across the terrace. Emma followed Grace's glance to see a tall, impeccably dressed man watching them with obvious displeasure. "That would be my charming brother-in-law, Jonathan Ashworth," Carter said quietly. "Grace's husband, and unfortunately the Wellington Hotel's chief financial officer. He doesn't look happy to see me," Emma observed. "He's not happy to see anyone who might interfere with his succession plans," Grace said with a roll of her eyes. "He's been campaigning to be the next CEO since he married into the family." "Grace," Patricia's voice carried a warning tone. "Perhaps we could save the family." Politics for after brunch. Of course, Mother wouldn't want to make our guest uncomfortable with reality. As they settled around the table, Emma found herself seated between Carter and Grace, with Patricia and Richard across from them, and Jonathan at the head of the table like he was already running the company. "So, Emma," Jonathan began cutting into his eggs Benedict with precision. "Carter tells us you run some sort of internet business. Digital marketing," Emma corrected politely. "We help small and medium-sized businesses compete in the online marketplace." How quaint. Jonathan's tone suggested he found it anything but. "And how exactly did you two meet?" Emma and Carter exchanged a quick glance. They'd prepared for this question. "At a coffee shop in Manhattan," Carter said. "Emma literally knocked me off my feet." "More like knocked some sense into you," Emma added with a grin, and Carter laughed. "It was the most honest conversation I'd had in years," Carter continued, his hand finding Emma's on the table. "She treated me like a regular person, not a bank account with legs." Patricia's lips pursed slightly. "How refreshing it really was," Grace said enthusiastically. "You should have seen Carter before, Emma. He was all work and no play. Now he actually smiles in public." "People change," Jonathan said dismissively, "usually temporarily." "What Jonathan means," Patricia interjected smoothly, "is that Carter has had phases before. Remember that artist you dated, darling? What was her name? The one who wanted to paint murals in the hotel lobbies." Emma felt Carter tense. Beside her, Sophia was a talented artist. "I'm sure she was, dear, but hardly appropriate for someone in your position." "And what position is that exactly?" Emma asked, her voice sweet, but with an edge that made Grace's eyes light up with interest. Patricia's smile grew cooler. "The position of someone who will inherit one of the largest hospitality empires in the country. Someone who needs a partner who understands the responsibilities that come with that." "You mean someone who comes from the right family and won't embarrass you at charity galas," Emma said with perfect clarity. The table went silent. Richard's eyebrows rose. Jonathan looked delighted at the potential drama. Grace was practically vibrating with excitement. Emma, Carter started, but she held up a gentle hand. "It's okay," she said to him, then turned back to Patricia. "Mrs. Wellington, I understand your concerns. You don't know me. You don't know my family, and you want to protect Carter and your family reputation. That's actually pretty admirable." Patricia looked slightly taken aback by the reasonable response. "But here's the thing," Emma continued, her voice warm but firm. "I'm not trying to marry into your family for money or status. I have my own career that I love, my own goals, and my own sense of worth that has nothing to do with how much money is in my bank account." She turned to look at Carter, and the warmth in her eyes wasn't entirely fabricated. "What I care about is that Carter makes me laugh. He challenges me to think bigger about my business. He listens when I talk about my dreams, and when he smiles, really smiles, not that polite thing he does at business dinners. It's like the sun coming out." Carter was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Around the table, everyone was silent. "Plus," Emma added with a grin, "he's not bad to look at." Grace burst out laughing. "Oh, I like her. I really, really like her." Even Richard cracked a smile. "She's got spirit, I'll give her that." Patricia, however, remained unmoved. "Spirit is all well and good, dear, but marriage? Who said anything about marriage?" Emma interrupted. "We're dating, we're getting to know each other. Isn't that how these things are supposed to work?" "Not in our world," Jonathan said coldly. In our world, relationships are strategic alliances, partnerships that benefit both families. Emma turned to him with genuine curiosity. That sounds incredibly lonely. It's practical. Is it working out for you? Emma asked innocently. The strategic alliance approach. Grace nearly choked on her mimosa. Jonathan's face re-ended. Emma, Carter said quietly, but she could hear the amusement in his voice. Sorry, Emma said, not sounding sorry at all. I just think love should be about more than tax benefits and social connections. Love, Patricia's voice was sharp. You're in love with my son. Emma felt the trap closing around her. This was the moment. Say yes and commit to a lie that could spiral out of control, or say no and undermine the entire charade. She looked at Carter, seeing the question in his eyes, the careful hope he was trying to hide. I'm falling, she said quietly. And it was terrifying how much truth was in those two words. Carter's hand tightened on hers, and when he smiled, it was that real smile she'd mentioned. The one that did feel like sunshine. So am I, he said, and Emma's heart skipped because she couldn't tell if he was acting any more either. The rest of brunch passed in a blur of polite conversation and family stories. Grace regaled Emma with embarrassing tales from Carter's childhood, while Patricia maintained her cool disapproval and Jonathan continued to radiate hostility. As they prepared to leave, Richard pulled Carter aside for a private conversation, while Patricia cornered Emma near the rose garden. You seem like a nice enough girl, Patricia began, her tone suggesting this wasn't entirely a compliment. But you need to understand what you're getting into. What do you mean? Carter isn't just a man, dear. He's a Wellington. That comes with responsibilities, expectations, a way of life that she paused, choosing her words carefully, that people from your background often find overwhelming. Emma felt her temper flare, but kept her voice level. What exactly is my background, Mrs. Wellington? Working gas, nothing wrong with that, of course, but it's different. The pressures of this family, the scrutiny, the social obligations, it changes people and not always for the better. Are you trying to scare me off? Patricia's smile was razor sharp. I'm trying to protect you both. Carter has a tendency to romanticize things that are different from his world, but the novelty always wears off, and then you're left with incompatible lives and broken hearts. Maybe, Emma said carefully, the problem isn't that Carter romanticizes different worlds. Maybe the problem is that his world is so narrow and cold that anything with genuine warmth feels revolutionary. Patricia's eyes flashed with anger. How dare you, Mrs. Wellington? Emma interrupted gently. I can see that you love your son, but loving someone means wanting them to be happy, not just appropriate. Before Patricia could respond, Carter appeared at Emma's side, ready to go. He asked, and Emma could see the tension around his eyes. More than ready. As they drove away from the estate, Emma and Carter were both quiet for several miles. Finally, Carter spoke. That was a disaster. I was going to say intense, but disaster works too. He glanced at her. You were incredible, by the way. The way you handled my mother, Jonathan's passive-aggressive attacks, the whole marriage interrogation. I may have gotten a little carried away with the I'm falling comment, Emma admitted. Sorry if that put you in an awkward position. Carter was quiet for a moment about that. Emma's heart started beating faster. Yeah, the thing is, he pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face her fully. I don't think I was acting either. The admission hung between them like a live wire. Emma stared at him, searching his face for any sign that this was part of the performance. Carter, I know this complicates everything. I know we have a contract and boundaries and this whole fake relationship thing, but Emma, I can't stop thinking about you. Not just when we're together for appearances, but all the time. The way you laugh, the way you challenge me, the way you make everything feel real. Emma's mind was spinning. This wasn't supposed to happen. They had rules, boundaries, a clear business arrangement. This is a really bad idea, she said quietly. Terrible idea, he agreed. It could ruin everything, probably will. They stared at each other for a long moment, the Atlantic Ocean stretching endlessly beside them. "So what do we do?" Emma asked. Carter reached over and cupped her face gently, his thumb tracing her cheek. "I have absolutely no idea." And then he kissed her. It wasn't a performance kiss or a photo op kiss. It was soft and tentative and full of questions neither of them knew how to answer. Emma felt herself melting into it, her hands fisting in his shirt as all her carefully constructed walls came tumbling down. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "That was," Emma began, "a complication." Carter finished, "A big one, huge," but neither of them moved away. Instead, Carter rested his forehead against hers and Emma closed her eyes, trying to figure out when exactly she'd stopped pretending to fall for Carter Wellington and started actually falling. "What happens now?" she whispered. "I don't know," Carter admitted, "but I'm tired of pretending that what I feel for you is fake." Emma opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked. She saw the vulnerability he was trying to hide, the hope he was afraid to acknowledge, the fear that she might walk away now that things had gotten real. "Your mother thinks I'm all wrong for you," she said. "My mother thinks a lot of things, doesn't mean she's right. Your whole family expects you to marry someone from your world. Maybe it's time I stopped living my life according to everyone else's expectations." Emma wanted to believe him. She wanted to throw caution to the wind and dive head first into whatever this was becoming. But she'd built her entire life on being practical, on making smart choices, on protecting herself from exactly this kind of situation. "Carter, if we do this, if we make this real, there's no going back to the contract and the boundaries and the safety net of it all being fake. I know, and if it doesn't work out, then we'll deal with that when we come to it." Carter's hand found hers again. "Emma, I've spent my entire life playing it safe, doing what was expected, following the predetermined path, and I've never been more miserable." He paused, his green eyes intense and sincere. "You make me want to be brave." Emma felt her last defenses crumble. "This is crazy, completely insane. We barely know each other. Then let's change that." Emma looked out at the ocean, then back at Carter's hopeful face. She thought about her safe, predictable life in Brooklyn, her carefully planned business goals, her determination to never depend on anyone else for her happiness. Then she thought about the way Carter made her laugh, the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the world, the way his smile could make her forget all her rational objections. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, let's try this, the real version, not the fake one." Carter's smile was brilliant. "Really?" "Really, but I have conditions." "Of course you do. We take it slow. We figure out who we are together when there aren't cameras or contracts or your family's expectations involved. And if it doesn't work," she took a deep breath, "if it doesn't work, we walk away before we destroy each other." "Deal," Carter said, lifting their joined hands to his lips and pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. As they drove back toward the city, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped off a cliff into free fall. She just hoped Carter would be there to catch her when she landed. 3 weeks later, Manhattan, Emma was discovering that dating a billionaire was both everything she'd expected and nothing like she'd imagined. The perks were undeniable. Carter had taken her to restaurants where reservations were booked months in advance, to Broadway shows from box seats that made her feel like royalty, to art gallery openings where she found herself discussing contemporary sculpture with people whose names she recognized from museum plaques. But it was the quiet moments that surprised her most. Carter showing up at her tiny Brooklyn apartment with takeout from her favorite Thai place, perfectly content to eat on her thrift store couch while she explained her latest marketing campaign. The way he listened, really listened, when she talked about her dreams of expanding her business. How he'd started asking her opinion on everything from his company's new sustainability initiative to what tie he should wear to board meetings. "You're different with her." Grace had told him over lunch the previous week when Emma had excused herself to take a business call. Lighter, more you. Carter had known exactly what his sister meant around Emma. He didn't feel the constant weight of being the Wellington heir. He felt like Carter, just Carter, and it was intoxicating, which made what happened on that Tuesday morning in October so much more devastating. Emma was in her office reviewing quarterly projections with her business partner Maya when her assistant knocked on the door. "Emma, there are some people here to see you. They say it's about Carter Wellington." Emma's stomach dropped. She'd been dreading this moment when their relationship became public enough to attract the wrong kind of attention. Two people entered her small conference room, a sharp, dressed woman with a briefcase and a man with a camera who definitely wasn't from any society magazine. "M. Blake," the woman began, settling into a chair without being invited. "I'm Jessica Chen from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. This is Detective Rodriguez from the NYPD Financial Crimes Unit." Maya's eyes went wide. Emma felt the room start to spin. "I'm sorry, what is this about?" "We're investigating allegations of financial fraud involving Wellington Hotels and several of their subsidiary companies," Detective Rodriguez said, pulling out a notepad. "Your name has come up in connection with our investigation. That's impossible. I don't have any business dealings with Wellington Hotels, but you do have a personal relationship with Carter Wellington," Jessica Chen said, consulting her file. "And you recently received a substantial payment from a Wellington family trust, nearly $500,000. Emma's mouth went dry. The contract payment, of course, it had come from a family trust. She should have realized that would leave a paper trail. That was for consulting work. Consulting work. Detective Rodriguez looked skeptical. "What kind of consulting work does a small digital marketing firm do for a billion-dollar hospitality empire?" Emma's mind raced. She couldn't tell them about the fake relationship contract without exposing Carter to embarrassment and potentially worse legal complications. But she also couldn't come up with a convincing lie on the spot. I helped with their digital marketing strategy for $500,000. Jessica Chen's eyebrows rose. "That's quite a generous fee for marketing advice, Ms. Blake." Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. "We have evidence suggesting that several payments like yours were made to individuals in Mr. Wellington's social circle around the same time that large sums were being moved out of company accounts. We need to understand the nature of your relationship with Mr. Wellington and exactly what services you provided in exchange for that payment." Emma felt sick. "Am I being accused of something?" "Not at this time," Jessica Chen said carefully. "But we would appreciate your cooperation in our investigation, and we'd advise you not to discuss this conversation with Mr. Wellington until we've had a chance to interview him separately." After they left, Emma sat in her empty conference room, staring at the wall and trying to process what had just happened. Maya finally broke the silence. "Emma, what the heck was that about? What payment were they talking about?" Emma closed her eyes. She'd never told Maya the real reason she'd suddenly been able to make payroll for the next year. Her best friend and business partner thought Emma had landed a huge new client. "It's complicated." "Complicated how, Emma?" "The NYPD just asked you about financial fraud. That's not complicated. That's terrifying." Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Carter. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Dinner at 8. Emma stared at the message, remembering Detective Rodriguez's warning not to discuss the investigation with Carter. How was she supposed to sit across from him at dinner and pretend everything was normal? Her phone rang. Carter's name appeared on the screen. "Hey," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hey yourself, you sound weird. Everything okay? Yeah, just busy day. Listen about tonight. Please don't cancel, Carter interrupted. I have something I want to talk to you about. Something important. Emma's heart sank even further. Carter, it's good news, I promise. Well, I hope you'll think it's good news. Just don't cancel, okay? After she hung up, Emma put her head in her hands. Whatever Carter wanted to discuss, she had a sinking feeling it was going to make everything infinitely more complicated. Meanwhile, across town at Wellington Hotel's headquarters, Carter was having the best day he'd had in years, right up until his father summoned him to the executive floor. He'd just finished presenting his new hospitality innovation proposal to the board, a plan to convert several of their older properties into eco-friendly boutique hotels that would appeal to younger, environmentally conscious travelers. The presentation had gone better than he'd hoped, with even the most conservative board members expressing cautious optimism. More importantly, he'd felt confident and passionate in a way he hadn't in years. Emma's influence, he knew. She'd helped him find his voice, encouraged him to think beyond the traditional Wellington approach. He was already planning how to tell her about the success over dinner when his father's assistant intercepted him in hallway. Your father needs to see you immediately, she said, her expression unreadable. Conference room A. Carter found his father standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to the door. Richard Wellington's posture was rigid, and Carter immediately knew something was wrong. Dad, you wanted to see me. Richard turned around, and Carter was shocked by the anger in his father's face. Sit down, Carter. I'd rather stand. I said, sit down. Carter had heard that tone exactly 3 times in his life. When he'd crashed his first car at 16, when he'd been caught cheating on his SAT, and when he'd announced he was dropping out of Harvard Business School to study hospitality in Switzerland. Each time it had preceded a conversation that had fundamentally changed the trajectory of his life. We have a problem, Richard began, placing a manila folder on the conference table. A significant problem that threatens everything we've built. Carter opened the folder and felt his world tilt on its axis. FBI financial investigation documents, subpoenas, bank records, and in the middle of it all, a highlighted transaction. A payment of $450,000 to Emma Blake Consulting. Dad, I can explain. Can you? Richard's voice was ice cold. Can you explain why during a federal investigation into potential money laundering and tax evasion, my son made a $500,000 payment to his girlfriend's company? Can you explain how that looks to investigators who are already questioning our family's financial practices? Carter's mind raced. It's not what it looks like. Then what is it, Carter? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you used company funds to pay your girlfriend, and now we're all under federal investigation. I didn't use company funds. I used my personal trust. Your personal trust that's funded by company profits. Richard slammed his hand on the table. Everything is connected, Carter. Every dollar that goes through our family accounts is scrutinized when we're under investigation. Carter felt sick. He'd never considered that the payment to Emma could be traced back to company funds, could implicate the entire family business in wrongdoing. What kind of investigation are we talking about? Richard pulled out another document. Money laundering, tax evasion, potential fraud. Someone tipped off the FBI that we've been moving large sums of money through shell companies and paying out suspicious consulting fees to individuals with no apparent business relationship to our company. But Emma does have a business relationship with us now. She's been helping with digital marketing strategies for $500,000. Richard's laugh was bitter. Carter, she runs a small firm in Brooklyn. Her biggest client before you was probably a local restaurant. No one is going to believe we paid her $500,000 for marketing advice. Carter realized the trap they'd walked into. In trying to make the payment look legitimate, they'd made it look even more suspicious. Who tipped off the FBI? Richard's expression darkened. We have our suspicions. Before Carter could ask what that meant, the conference room door opened and Jonathan Ashworth walked in, looking perfectly composed and faintly satisfied. Jonathan, Richard said, I've just been explaining the situation to Carter. Unfortunate business, Jonathan said, settling into a chair. I've been reviewing our options with the legal team. Carter looked between his father and brother-in-law, a cold suspicion growing in his chest. What options? The FBI wants to interview everyone involved, Richard said. Family members, employees, anyone who received significant payments in the last 6 months, including Emma, Jonathan added helpfully. Carter's blood ran cold. You're going to drag Emma into this? She's already in it, Richard said harshly. The moment you decided to use family money to pay your girlfriend, you made her part of this investigation. She didn't do anything wrong. Maybe not, Jonathan said smoothly, but the optics are terrible. The heir to a hotel empire paying large sums to his girlfriend right before a federal investigation. It looks like either corruption or money laundering. Carter stared at Jonathan, pieces clicking into place. You did this. I'm sorry. You tipped off the FBI. You've been looking for a way to discredit me, and you found it. Jonathan's expression didn't change, but Carter caught a flash of something that might have been satisfaction. That's a serious accusation, Carter. I hope you have proof, boys, Richard interrupted. This isn't the time for family politics. We need to focus on damage control. What kind of damage control? Carter asked. Richard and Jonathan exchanged a look that made Carter's stomach drop. The board is meeting tomorrow morning, Richard said carefully. Given the circumstances, they're going to vote on whether you should be removed from the CEO succession plan. Carter felt like he'd been punched. What? It's temporary, Richard said quickly, until this investigation is resolved and we can clear up any questions about your judgment. My judgment, Carter, Jonathan said with fake sympathy. You have to understand how this looks. You've been making erratic decisions dating outside your social circle. And now there's a federal investigation involving payments to your girlfriend. The board has to consider the company's reputation. Carter looked at his father. And you agree with this? Richard's face was pained but resolute. I think you need to step back until we can sort this out. Take some time away from the company. Let the investigation run its course. You're suspending me. We're protecting you, Jonathan corrected, and protecting the company. Carter stood up slowly, his mind reeling. In the span of 20 minutes, he'd gone from the heir apparent to a company pariah under federal investigation. What about Emma? What about her? Richard asked. She is going to be questioned by the FBI because of a payment I made to her. Her business, her reputation, everything could be destroyed. Because of me? That's unfortunate, Jonathan said, but it's out of our hands now. Carter looked at his brother-in-law with new understanding. This wasn't just about removing him from the succession plan. This was about destroying his relationship with Emma, isolating him from anyone who made him happy, ensuring he came back to the family business grateful and compliant. You magnificent snake, Carter said quietly. Jonathan smiled. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Carter turned to his father. Dad, you're being played. Jonathan orchestrated this whole thing. Carter. Richard's voice held a warning. You're upset. Don't say something you'll regret. The only thing I regret is not seeing this coming. Carter headed for the door, then turned back. When this investigation clears our family, and it will, I hope you'll remember who stood by you and who threw you under the bus for personal gain. Carter, Richard started. I'm going to protect Emma, Carter said firmly, whatever it takes. That evening at dinner, Emma arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes late, her mind still spinning from the morning's FBI visit. Carter was already seated at their usual corner table, but something was off. His smile seemed forced, and there were tension lines around his eyes she'd never seen before. Sorry I'm late, she said, sliding into a chair. Crazy day. Mine too, Carter said, and Emma caught something in his tone that made her look at him more carefully. Everything okay? Carter reached across the table and took her hand. Actually, there's something I need to tell you, something important. Emma's heart started racing. This was it. He was going to tell her about the investigation, and she'd have to pretend she didn't already know. Carter, I love you. Emma's world stopped. Of all the things she'd expected him to say, that wasn't one of them. What? I love you, Carter repeated, his green eyes intense and sincere. I know it's crazy and we haven't been together that long, but Emma, I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. You make me want to be better, braver, more honest. You make me feel like myself." Emma stared at him, her heart breaking. Here was the man she'd fallen completely, hopelessly in love with, telling her he loved her back, and she couldn't even enjoy the moment because she knew their entire relationship was about to implode. "Carter, I know it's a lot," he continued, misreading her hesitation, "and I'm not asking you to say it back if you're not ready. I just needed you to know because whatever happens, whatever challenges we face, I want to face them together." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "Whatever happens," Carter's expression grew serious. "There are some complications with my family with the business. Things might get difficult for a while, but Emma, if you're willing to weather the storm with me, I think we can get through anything." He was giving her an out. Emma realized, warning her that things were about to get complicated, offering her a chance to walk away before the investigation became public. It would be so easy to take it, to say she wasn't ready for complications, that they should take a break until things settled down. She could protect her business, her reputation, her heart. But looking at Carter's hopeful face, thinking about everything they'd built together, Emma knew she couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when he needed her most. "I love you too," she said quietly. Carter's smile was brilliant. "Really?" "Really?" She squeezed his hand, "And whatever these complications are, we'll handle them together." Carter lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles softly. "I don't deserve you. Lucky for you, I disagree." They ordered dinner and tried to maintain normal conversation, but Emma could see the worry Carter was trying to hide. She wanted to tell him about the FBI visit to share the burden of what was coming, but Detective Rodriguez's warning echoed in her mind. It wasn't until they were walking back to Carter's car that Emma's phone rang. Maya's name appeared on the screen. "I should take this," Emma said apologetically. "Work stuff." "Emma," Maya's voice was tight with panic. "Thank goodness. You need to get down here right now. What's wrong? The FBI is here at the office with a search warrant." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. "What? They're going through everything. Our files, our computers, our financial records." "Emma, what the heck is going on?" Carter was watching her face, and she saw the moment he realized something was terribly wrong. "Maya, I'll be right there." She hung up and looked at Carter, who was already pulling out his own phone. "Emma, what?" He stopped, staring at his screen. "I have 12 missed calls from my father." They looked at each other, both understanding that whatever they'd been trying to protect each other from had just exploded into the open. "The FBI searched your office," Carter said quietly. It wasn't a question. "You already knew about the investigation." Emma replied, equally quiet. "I was trying to figure out how to tell you." "So was I." They stood on the sidewalk, people walking around them, the city continuing to move while their world crumbled. "Emma," Carter said carefully, "the payment I made to you, it's part of investigation. They think it looks like money laundering or fraud. I know. They came to see me this morning." Carter closed his eyes. "This is my fault. I never should have involved you in my family business." "Carter, no. Listen to me." He opened his eyes and Emma saw desperation there. "This is going to get ugly. My family, the media, the investigation, they're going to come after you. They're going to try to destroy your business, your reputation, everything you've worked for. We'll fight it." "Emma, you don't understand. My brother-in-law has been planning this. He wants me out of the company, and he's willing to destroy anyone who stands in his way, including you." Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October evening. "What are you saying?" Carter took her hands in his, and she could see the pain in his face. "I'm saying maybe we should take a break until this investigation is over, until the danger to you passes. You want to break up. I want to protect you." Emma pulled her hands away. "From what? From you, from your family, from the investigation, from all of it." Emma stared at him, understanding dawning. "You think if we're not together, they'll leave me alone? I think if you're not connected to me, you have a better chance of surviving this intact. And what about us?" Carter's smile was heartbreaking. "There might not be an us to save if I don't protect you now." Emma felt something crack inside her chest. So that's it. The first real crisis we face, and you want to run. I want to keep you safe. I didn't ask you to keep me safe, Carter. I asked you to love me. I do love you. That's why I have to do this. Emma looked at the man she'd fallen in love with. The man who just told her he loved her back, and realized he was about to walk away from everything they'd built together. You know what I think, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I think you're scared, not of the investigation, not of your brother-in-law, but of fighting for something that matters, of choosing love over the easy path. Carter flinched. That's not fair, isn't it? Your whole life you've done what other people expected, what was safe, what was appropriate, what kept everyone happy. And the first time you have to choose between what other people want and what you want, you're already backing down. Emma, please understand. I understand perfectly. Emma's voice was cold now, anger and hurt mixing into something sharp and cutting. I understand that you talk a good game about being brave and choosing love, but when it actually matters, you're just another rich boy who runs home to daddy when things get complicated. Carter looked like she'd slapped him again. Emma, goodbye, Carter. Emma turned and walked away, not trusting herself to look back. Behind her, she could hear Carter calling her name, but she didn't stop. It wasn't until she was in a taxi heading back to Brooklyn that she let herself cry. 2 days later, Emma sat in her apartment surrounded by legal documents and newspaper clippings. The story had broken that morning. FBI investigates Wellington hotels in money laundering probe. Her name was mentioned in third paragraph. Her phone had been ringing non-stop. Reporters, potential clients canceling contracts, friends calling to check if she was okay. Maya was fielding calls at the office trying to keep their remaining clients from jumping ship. The doorbell rang and Emma considered not answering it. She wasn't in the mood for more reporters or FBI agents or anyone else who wanted to pick apart her life, but when she looked through the peephole, she saw Grace Wellington standing in the hallway looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Emma opened the door. Grace, hi. Grace held up a bottle of wine and a bag of what looked like takeout. I brought reinforcements. Can I come in? Emma stepped aside and Grace entered her small apartment looking around with obvious curiosity. This is nice, Grace said, and she sounded like she meant it. Very real. It's about to be really empty if I can't save my business. Grace set the wine and food on Emma's coffee table. That's actually why I'm here. Well, partly. I don't understand. Grace sat down on Emma's couch and looked directly at her. I know what Jonathan did. I know he orchestrated this whole investigation to get Carter out of the succession plan. Emma felt a flicker of hope. Can you prove it? Not yet, but I'm working on it. Grace paused. I also know my brother is an idiot. Despite everything, Emma almost smiled. Which brother? The one who thinks he's protecting you by breaking your heart. Emma sat down across from Grace. He told you what happened. He didn't have to. He looks like someone ran over his puppy. Plus, he's been staying at my place for 2 days eating ice cream and watching old romantic comedies. It's pathetic. He left you, he left everyone, moved out of his apartment, took a leave of absence from the company, basically went into hiding. Grace opened the wine with practiced efficiency. He thinks if he disappears, the investigation will focus on him and leave you alone. Will it? Probably not. Jonathan wants to destroy anyone who matters to Carter. That includes you. Emma felt exhaustion wash over her. So, what am I supposed to do? My business is falling apart. My reputation is in ruins, and the man I love thinks the best way to help me is to abandon me. You fight, Grace said simply. You fight for your business, your reputation, and yes, even for my stupid brother. Grace, I can't. Emma, can I tell you something about Carter that he probably never told you? Emma nodded. When we were kids, Carter had this dog, a golden retriever named Ranger. Carter loved that dog more than anything in the world. But when Carter was 12, our father decided Ranger was becoming a distraction from Carter's studies. So he had the dog sent away to live on a farm upstate. Emma's heart clenched. That's awful. Carter was devastated. But you know what he did. He accepted it. He thanked our father for making the responsible decision and never mentioned Ranger again. Grace took a sip of wine. That's what Carter does when he loves something. He lets other people convince him it's for the best to give it up. So what changed? What made him different with me? You did. For the first time in his life, Carter fought for something he wanted. He stood up to our mother, defied family expectations, chose love over duty. Grace leaned forward, but now he's scared. Scared that loving you will destroy you the way staying in our family destroyed him. Emma was quiet for a long moment. What if he's right? What if being with him will destroy me? What if it won't? Grace countered. What if fighting for each other makes you both stronger? Emma looked around her apartment at the legal documents, the canceled contracts, the evidence of her life falling apart. I don't know how to fight this, Grace. I'm not built for corporate warfare and family politics and federal investigations. Maybe not, Grace said with a smile that reminded Emma strongly of Carter. But you're built for love, and sometimes that's the most powerful weapon of all. Emma stared at her, feeling something shift inside her chest. Maybe Grace was right. Maybe running away wasn't the answer. Maybe it was time to fight. What did you have in mind? Emma asked. Grace's smile turned wicked. How do you feel about a little corporate espionage? 10 days later, multiple locations across Manhattan. Emma had never imagined herself as the kind of person who would break into a corporate office at midnight. But then again, 3 weeks ago, she'd never imagined herself falling in love with a billionaire or being investigated by the FBI either. Life, she was learning, had a way of pushing you into roles you never auditioned for. Are you sure about this? Maya whispered from beside her as they crouched in the stairwell of the Wellington Hotel's headquarters building. Because if we get caught, I was helping my best friend commit corporate espionage. To save her relationship is not going to look good on my resume. We're not committing corporate espionage, Emma whispered back, adjusting the strap of her laptop bag. We're conducting an independent investigation into potential fraud. Grace gave us the access codes. Grace is Carter's sister. This feels like a family conspiracy. It is a family conspiracy, came Grace's voice from the comm device. In Emma's ear, she was coordinating from her apartment, hacking into security cameras and guiding them through the building remotely. And we're the good guys now. Stop talking and move. You have a narrow window before the night security guard does his next round. Emma and Maya made their way up to the 28th floor, where Jonathan Ashworth's corner office overlooked the Hudson River. According to Grace, Jonathan had been sloppy in covering his tracks, overconfident that his plan to frame Carter would work without scrutiny. His computer should be unlocked. Grace's voice crackled through the earpiece. He never logs out because he thinks he's untouchable. Look for anything with Meridian Holdings or Coastal Development Partners in the file name. Emma slipped behind Jonathan's massive desk, her fingers flying across his keyboard. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was using her digital marketing skills to expose corporate fraud. Maya kept watch by the door, her phone ready to alert them if anyone approached. Found something, Emma murmured. A folder labeled Project Reset with dozens of financial documents. Download everything, Grace instructed, and Emma, look for anything referencing FBI contacts or whistleblower communications. As Emma copied files to her encrypted drive, she scanned through the documents. What she found made her blood run cold. Jonathan hadn't just tipped off the FBI about suspicious payments from Wellington hotels. He'd been orchestrating a systematic embezzlement scheme for years, using shell companies and fake consulting contracts to siphon money from the family business. The payment to Emma wasn't suspicious because it was fraud. It was suspicious because it was legitimate, and it broke the pattern of all the actual fraudulent payments Jonathan had been making to his own network of fake companies, Maya, Emma whispered urgently. He's been stealing from them for years, millions of dollars. That's nice, but can we discuss it somewhere? That isn't a felony to be in. Emma was about to agree when she found a folder that made her heart stop. Carter's succession removal. Inside were detailed plans for destroying Carter's reputation, including communications with FBI contacts, planted stories for gossip columnists, and a comprehensive strategy for isolating Carter from anyone who might support him. At the bottom of the folder was a document that made Emma's hands shake with rage. Personal targets for elimination. Her name was at the top of the list, followed by Grace and several of Carter's friends and business associates. Jonathan had detailed plans for destroying each of their lives, complete with timelines and specific methods. Emma, Maya's voice was sharp with panic. Someone's coming, we need to go now. Emma grabbed the external drive and her laptop, but as they headed for the door, she heard Grace's voice in her earpiece, tight with worry. Emma, stop, don't leave yet. Grace, we have to trust me. Hide. Both of you behind the desk right now. Emma and Maya dove behind Jonathan's desk just as the office door opened. Through the gap in the desk panels, Emma could see 2 sets of expensive shoes enter the room. Are you certain this will work? The first voice was Jonathan's, cold and calculating. The FBI is convinced, replied the second voice, which Emma recognized as belonging to Patricia Wellington, Carter's mother. Carter's fingerprints are all over the shell company documents we planted in his apartment. By tomorrow morning, he'll be arrested for embezzlement and money laundering. Emma's blood turned to ice. They were framing Carter for Jonathan's crimes, and the girl, Jonathan asked. Emma Blake will be charged as an accomplice, Patricia said dismissively. Her business will be destroyed, her reputation ruined. She'll be lucky if she doesn't serve prison time. Emma felt Maya grab her hand, squeezing tight to keep her from doing something rash. You're certain Richard will support this? Jonathan continued. Richard wants the scandal to end, and he wants Carter to learn his place in this family. Patricia replied, when Carter is cleared of the charges after serving enough time to humble him, he'll be grateful to return to the company on our terms without the distractions of inappropriate relationships or misguided independence. And I'll be CEO, as was always the plan. Carter was never suited for leadership, too soft, too emotional, too willing to put personal feelings above family interests. Emma had heard enough. She pulled out her phone and started recording the conversation, her hands trembling with rage. The FBI raid is scheduled for tomorrow at dawn, Patricia continued. Carter's apartment, his office, and Blake's business. By noon, both of them will be in custody. Perfect. And Grace. Grace will fall in line once she sees what happens to people who oppose family decisions. She's always been smarter than Carter. As their footsteps retreated, Emma and Maya remained frozen behind the desk until Grace's voice came through the earpiece. They're gone. You can come out now. Emma stood on shaking legs, her mind reeling from what she just heard. Patricia Wellington, Carter's own mother, was actively participating in destroying him and everyone he cared about. Did you get all of that? Grace asked as Emma and Maya made their way quickly to the elevator. Every word, Emma confirmed, checking her phone recording. Grace, we have to warn Carter. They're going to arrest him tomorrow morning. I know, I heard everything through your phone. Grace's voice was tight with emotion. My own mother. I knew she disapproved of you, but I never thought. Where is Carter? Maya asked as they reached the lobby. That's the problem, Grace said. He's been hiding from everyone, including me, but I have an idea where he might be. Meanwhile, at a small hotel in Queens, Carter Wellington was discovering that heartbreak had a specific taste. Bitter coffee at 2:00 a.m., cold pizza for breakfast, and the metallic flavor of regret that coated everything he tried to eat. He'd been hiding in a modest hotel in Queens for over a week, paying cash and using a fake name to avoid being found by his family, the FBI, or the press. More importantly, to avoid being found by Emma. Every day he told himself he'd made the right choice. Every day he picked up his phone to call her and forced himself to put it down. He'd seen the news coverage of the investigation spreading to her business. Read The articles questioning her integrity watched from afar as his decision to love her destroyed everything she'd worked for. This was why people like him didn't fall in love with people like her. This was why his family had rules, expectations, boundaries. This was why he should have stuck to dating women from his own world, who understood the cost of being involved with the Wellington name. But even as he told himself these things, Carter couldn't stop thinking about Emma's laugh, the way she challenged him to be better, the look in her eyes when she'd told him she loved him. He couldn't stop wondering if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life by walking away. His phone rang, jarring him from his thoughts. Grace's name appeared on the screen. "I told you I'm not coming home," he said without preamble. "Carter, shut up and listen to me. You're in danger, real danger." Something in his sister's voice made Carter sit up straighter. "What are you talking about? Jonathan and Mother have been working together. They've framed you for Jonathan's embezzlement scheme. The FBI is going to arrest you tomorrow morning." Carter felt the room spin. "That's impossible." "It's not only possible, it's happening. They planted evidence in your apartment, Carter. Financial documents linking you to shell companies that Jonathan created to steal money from the family business. But I know you never. Emma and I know you never, but the FBI doesn't know that. And they have what looks like solid evidence that you've been embezzling millions of dollars." Carter ran his hand through his hair, trying to process what Grace was telling him. "Emma knows about this. Emma is the one who figured it out. She and Maya broke into Jonathan's office tonight and found everything. His real financial records, his plans to destroy you, his communications with the FBI. Emma broke into Jonathan's office." Carter couldn't hide the admiration in his voice. "Turns out your girlfriend is a lot tougher than you gave her credit for. She's been fighting for you even after you abandoned her like an idiot." Carter closed his eyes, guilt and love and regret washing over him in equal measure. "Grace, I was trying to protect her. You were trying to protect yourself from having to fight for something that mattered, just like you've done your whole life." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "That's not as fair, and you know it. Carter, do you remember when Father sent Ranger away?" Carter's throat tightened at the mention of his childhood dog. "What does that have to do with anything? You let them convince you it was for the best. You didn't fight. You didn't argue. You just accepted that loving something meant losing it. And you've been doing the same thing ever since." Ranger was a dog. "Grace, this is Emma's life, her future, and she's willing to fight for it. She's willing to fight for you, for your relationship, for the truth. But you ran away because fighting is scary and losing is possible, and it's easier to give up than risk failure." Carter was quiet for a long moment, his sister's words hitting deeper than he wanted to admit. "What if I fight and lose? Anyway, what if loving her really does destroy her? Then at least she'll know you thought she was worth fighting for." Before Carter could respond, he heard voices in the hotel hallway outside his room. Loud voices, official voices, the kind that meant authority and trouble. "Grace," he whispered urgently, "I think someone's here." "What do you mean someone's here?" The voices were getting closer, and Carter could make out words now. "Room 237. Warrant, Wellington, the FBI. They found me." "Carter, listen to me very carefully." Grace's voice was sharp with urgency. "Do not let them arrest you tonight. If they take you into custody now, Jonathan and Mother will have time to solidify their frame job. You need to get out of there and meet us. Meet you where? Emma has a plan. She's going to clear your name, but she needs you to trust her." The voices were right outside his door now. Carter could hear them discussing tactical positions, preparing to knock. "Grace, I don't think I can." Carter, Grace's voice was soft now, full of the love and faith she'd always had in him. "Emma slapped you in a coffee shop because you were being an arrogant jerk. She's been fighting the FBI and our family and half of Manhattan because you're worth it. Don't you think it's time you started fighting for her too?" The knock came at the door, loud and authoritative. "FBI, open up." Carter looked around the small hotel room at the life he'd been hiding in, at the man he'd become when he'd stopped fighting for what mattered. "Where do I meet you?" he asked. Grace's smile was audible through the phone. Brooklyn, Emma's apartment, and Carter, yes, bring your A game. We're about to take on the family business. Carter grabbed his jacket and headed for the window, grateful that Queen's hotels weren't built for security. As he climbed down the fire escape, he could hear the FBI agents breaking down his door. For the first time in weeks, he was running towards something instead of away from it. 3 hours later, Emma's apartment in Brooklyn. Emma had never seen her small apartment so crowded with people planning what was essentially a corporate coup. Grace sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by laptops and legal documents. Maya was on the couch with her own computer, coordinating with several of their freelance tech contractors who specialized in digital forensics, and pacing by the window, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, was David Chen, Emma's ex-boy, friend from college who happened to be an investigative journalist for the Wall Street Journal. "I still can't believe you called David," Mia muttered, not looking up from her screen. "We need someone with media connections who can get this story out fast," Emma replied, checking her phone for the 100th time. "And David owes me a favor." "He owes you more than a favor," Grace said with interest. "What exactly did you do for him?" "She wrote his senior thesis," Maya said helpfully. "The one that got him hired at the Journal. I helped him research it," Emma corrected. "And right now, that connection might save Carter's life." David stopped pacing and turned to face the room. "Okay, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to publish a story accusing one of New York's most prominent families of fraud, embezzlement, and framing their own son based on evidence obtained through breaking and entering. When you put it like that, it sounds bad," Grace said. "It sounds insane. It sounds like career suicide. It sounds like the kind of story that gets you sued into oblivion by people who have more lawyers than I have brain cells." Emma looked at David, seeing the conflict in his face. He wanted the story. It was huge, the kind that could make his career, but he was scared. And she understood that everyone in this room was risking something enormous. "David," she said quietly, "what if I can give you something even better than accusations? What if I can give you proof?" She pulled out her phone and played the recording she'd made of Jonathan and Patricia's conversation. As their voices filled the small apartment, David's expression changed from skepticism to amazement to the hungry look of a journalist who just stumbled onto the story of a lifetime. "This is," he began, "legally obtained evidence of conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction of justice." Grace finished. "Plus, we have Jonathan's financial records showing the real embezzlement scheme." And Meyer added, "We have digital forensics proving that the evidence against Carter was planted in his computer systems after the fact." David stared at them all. "You realize what you're asking me to do? This isn't just exposing corporate fraud. This is taking down one of the most powerful families in New York. Part of that family," Emma corrected. "The part that's trying to destroy an innocent man. The part that's been stealing from their own company for years," Grace added. "The part that's willing to send people to prison to cover their tracks," Maya concluded. David was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks against the potential reward. Finally, he nodded. "I'll need independent verification of everything, sources who can go on record, financial experts who can authenticate the documents." "Done," Grace said immediately. "I can provide internal sources at Wellington hotels who have suspected Jonathan for years, but were afraid to speak up. And I can connect you with forensic accountants who specialize in corporate fraud," Emma added. David pulled out his own laptop. "Okay, but we need to move fast. If the FBI arrests Carter tomorrow, this becomes infinitely more complicated." "About that," Grace said, glancing at Emma. "Carter should be here soon." Emma's heart jumped. "He's coming here." "I convinced him to stop running and start fighting." "You convinced him or you ordered him?" Meyer asked with a grin. "Little of both." Emma felt a mixture of anticipation and terror. She hadn't seen Carter since their devastating breakup, hadn't heard his voice, except in her dreams and nightmares. What if seeing him again made her lose her resolve? What if he was still convinced that leaving her was the best way to protect her? What if he'd decided he didn't love her anymore? The knock at her door came at exactly 4:00 a.m., soft but insistent. Emma's heart hammered as she approached the door, checking the peephole to see Carter standing in the hallway. He looked terrible, exhausted, unshaven, wearing clothes that had clearly been slept in. But when their eyes met through the small window, she saw something she hadn't expected. Determination. Emma opened the door, and for a moment they just stared at each other. All the words they needed to say, all the hurt and love and fear and hope, hung in the air between them. "Hi," Carter said finally. "Hi, yourself. I hear you've been breaking into corporate offices and taking on the FBI. Someone had to. You were too busy hiding in Queen's Motel." Carter's smile was woeful, touche, behind Emma. Grace cleared her throat loudly. "As touching as this reunion is, we have about 2 hours before the FBI expects to arrest Carter. Can we focus on not letting that happen?" Carter stepped into the apartment, taking in the scene. Computers everywhere, legal documents spread across every surface, the organized chaos of people working against impossible odds. "Grace filled me in on what you found," he said to Emma. "You risked everything to clear my name. I risked everything to find the truth." Emma corrected. "Clearing your name was just a side benefit." Emma, Carter's voice was soft, full of things he couldn't say in a room full of people. "Later," she said firmly. "Right now, we have work to do." For the next hour, they worked with focused intensity. David crafted his article while Grace provided insider information, and Maya handled the technical aspects of document verification. Carter, meanwhile, contacted family allies who might be willing to support them when the story broke. "I've got 3 board members who will go on record about their suspicions regarding Jonathan," Carter reported, "and my father's longtime assistant is willing to testify about Patricia's involvement in company financial decisions." "That's good," David said, typing furiously, "but I need more. I need someone who can speak to the family dynamics, someone who can explain why Patricia would turn against her own son." Emma and Carter exchanged a look. They both knew who could provide that insight, but neither wanted to suggest it. "Victoria Ashford," Grace said quietly. "She's known our family for 30 years, serves on multiple boards with Mother, and she genuinely likes Emma." "The woman from the charity dinner," Emma asked. "Would she really go against your mother publicly?" "Victoria has her own sense of honor," Carter said thoughtfully, "and she despises corruption in any form. If we can prove to her what's really happening, I'll call her," Grace said, reaching for her phone. "Grace, it's 4:30 in the morning." Victoria gets up at 5:00 to swim laps in her pool. She'll be awake. As Grace made the call, Emma found herself standing next to Carter by the window, watching the sun begin to rise over Brooklyn. The proximity felt both natural and electric, like standing next to a live wire that could either light up her world or burn it down. "Emma," Carter said quietly, "after this is over, we need to talk. Do we? I owe you an apology. A massive, graveling, possibly humiliating apology." Emma looked at him sideways. "Possibly humiliating? I'm hoping you'll take pity on me before it gets to that point." Despite everything, Emma found herself smiling. "We'll see." Grace hung up the phone with a triumphant expression. "Victoria is in. She's already suspected something was wrong with the family finances, and she's been wondering why Patricia was so determined to sabotage Carter's relationship with you. She'll meet with David in 2 hours. "Perfect," David said. "I can have the story filed by noon, but there's one more thing we need to consider." "What's that?" Carter asked. "The FBI raid. Even if my story comes out today, they're still going to arrest you this morning based on the evidence they have. We need a way to delay that until the truth comes out." Emma had been thinking about this problem all night. What if Carter turns himself in? Everyone stared at her. "That's your plan?" Meyer asked. "Voluntary imprisonment. Think about it. Emma continued. If Carter walks into the FBI field office with his own lawyer, presents evidence of being framed, and demands a proper investigation, it changes the entire narrative. He's not a fugitive being arrested. He's a victim seeking justice. That's actually brilliant, Grace said slowly. It forces them to listen to his side of the story instead of just processing him through the system. And it gives David's story time to hit the newsstands, Carter added, understanding dawning in his voice. By the time they could formally charge me, the truth would already be public. David nodded approvingly. It also makes for better headlines. Innocent man seeks justice plays a lot better than corporate heir arrested for fraud. Carter looked around the room at the people who'd risked everything to save him, his sister, Emma's best friend, Emma's ex-boyfriend, and Emma herself. People who barely knew him but had believed in his innocence when his own family hadn't. Why? He asked quietly. Why did you all do this for me? Because you're my brother and I love you, Grace said simply. Because Emma loves you and I love Emma, Meyer added. Because it's a great story and I want a Pulitzer, David said with a grin. Everyone turned to look at Emma, waiting for her answer. She met Carter's eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, the genuine confusion of someone who'd never experienced unconditional support. Because, she said softly, someone once told me that love means fighting for each other, not running away when things get difficult. Carter's expression cracked, and Emma saw him struggling with emotions he wasn't used to expressing publicly. Emma, he began, his voice rough. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for leaving you, for thinking I could protect you by abandoning you, for being a coward when you needed me to be brave. Carter, let me finish, please. He took a step closer to her, and Emma could see the tears threatening in his green eyes. You were right about everything. I spent my whole life giving up the things I loved because it was easier than fighting for them. I told myself it was noble, that I was protecting people, but really, I was just protecting myself from the possibility of failure. Emma felt her own eyes filling with tears around them. The room had gone completely quiet. But you, Carter continued, you fought for me even when I wouldn't fight for myself. You faced down the FBI, broke into corporate offices, took on my family, risked everything you'd worked for. Not because you had to, but because you believed I was worth saving. He reached out and gently cupped her face, his thumb wiping away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. I love you, Emma Blake. I love your courage, your integrity, your refusal to back down when you believe in something. I love the way you challenge me to be better, the way you see the man I could be instead of just the man I am. Emma's heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone in the room could hear it. And if you'll let me, Carter continued, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I can be the man who deserves your love, the man who fights for what matters, the man who chooses love over fear every single time. Emma stared at him, seeing not the polished corporate prince she'd met in a coffee shop, but the real Carter, vulnerable, hopeful, finally ready to fight for what he wanted. That depends, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. On what? On whether you're going to call me sweetheart again. Carter's laugh was watery but genuine. Never again, I promise. Then yes, Emma said, stepping into his arms, yes to all of it. When Carter kissed her, it felt like coming home and starting an adventure all at the same time. It tasted like second chances and new beginnings, and the kind of love that was strong enough to survive anything. Okay, Grace said loudly after what felt like an appropriate amount of time. This is very sweet, and I'm thrilled that my brother finally grew a spine, but we still have to keep him out of prison. So maybe save the reunion make-out session for after we've taken down Jonathan and Mother. Emma and Carter broke apart, both of them smiling and slightly embarrassed. Right, Carter said, his arm still around Emma's waist. Let's go save the family business and destroy the people who tried to destroy us. Emma added with a grin that was absolutely wicked. Carter looked down at her with pure adoration. Have I mentioned lately that you're terrifying and I love it? You can mention it again later. Right now, we have a war to win. 6 hours later, FBI Field Office, Federal Plaza. Carter walked into the FBI building, flanked by his lawyer, David Chen, and Emma, feeling more confident than he had in weeks. Behind them, Grace coordinated with a growing team of supporters, board members, family allies, financial experts, and journalists who were all working to expose the truth. The story had broken an hour earlier. David's article in the Wall Street Journal was already being picked up by major news outlets across the country. Wellington hotels airframed by family members in complex embezzlement scheme. The evidence was damning, the sources credible, and the public reaction swift and decisive. Special Agent Rebecca Martinez, who'd been leading the investigation, met them in the lobby. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Carter could see the frustration in her eyes. "Mr. Wellington," she said formally, "we appreciate you coming involuntarily." Agent Martinez, Carter's lawyer, replied, "My client is here to provide information about the real perpetrators of crimes you've been investigating. We're aware of the news reports that came out this morning," Agent Martinez said carefully. "We're reviewing the new evidence, but I'm sure you understand that we can't simply drop an investigation based on newspaper articles." "Of course not," Emma said, stepping forward with a briefcase full of documents. "That's why we brought you the original financial records, digital forensics reports, and recorded confessions." Agent Martinez's eyebrows rose. Recorded confessions. Jonathan Ashworth and Patricia Wellington discussing their plan to frame Carter, their timeline for his arrest, and their motivations for destroying his relationship with Emma. Carter said calmly, "All recorded legally by witnesses who were present during the conversation." "And where exactly did this conversation take place?" "Wellington Hotel's headquarters," Grace said, joining the group. "In Jonathan's office, which I gave Ms. Blake permission to access as a member of the Wellington family and a company shareholder." Agent Martinez looked between them all, clearly calculating implications. "I'll need to review everything with my team. Of course," Carter said, "in the meantime, I'd like to provide a full statement about my knowledge of the financial irregularities at Wellington Hotels and my suspicions about who was really responsible." Over the next 3 hours, Carter laid out everything he knew about Jonathan's gradual takeover of company financial operations, his manipulation of family politics, and his systematic embezzlement of company funds. Emma and Grace provided supporting evidence while David documented everything for his follow-up articles. By the time they emerged from the FBI building, the story had exploded across social media and financial news networks. Jonathan Ashworth had been arrested at his Hampton house. Patricia Wellington was being questioned by federal agents, and the board of directors had called an emergency meeting to address the crisis. "So, what happens now?" Emma asked as they stood on the steps of the federal building surrounded by reporters and photographers. "Now," Carter said, taking her hand in front of all the cameras, "we go home and plan our future. What about Wellington Hotels? The company will survive, stronger than the people who tried to destroy it." Carter looked down at her with a smile that was pure joy, "just like we are." Emma stood on her tiptoes and kissed him right there in front of the FBI building and half the media in New York. It was the kind of kiss that made headlines, the kind that symbolized love conquering all, the kind that made people believe in happy endings. When they finally broke apart, Emma grinned up at him. "So, what do we do for our second date?" Carter laughed, the sound rich and free and full of possibilities. "Whatever we want. We've got the rest of our lives to figure it out." 6 months later, Emma stood in the penthouse office that Carter had insisted on buying for her expanded marketing firm, looking out at the Manhattan skyline and marveling at how much her life had changed. Blake and Associates now occupied 3 floors of a midtown building, employed 15 people, and had a client list that included several Fortune 500 companies. More importantly, she'd kept her soul in the process. Her company specialized in helping small businesses compete with larger corporations, and she made sure that for every high-paying corporate client, they took on 3 smaller businesses at reduced rates. Knock, knock. Carter's voice came from the doorway. Is the CEO of Manhattan's fastest-growing marketing firm available for lunch? Emma turned around, her heart still skipping at the sight of him. Carter had taken over as CEO of Wellington Hotels after his father's retirement, and the change in him was remarkable. He was confident without being arrogant, decisive without being ruthless, and he'd implemented changes that made the company more ethical and employee-focused than it had ever been. That depends, Emma said, walking over to kiss him. Hello, is the CEO of one of America's most respected hotel chains buying? Always, Carter said, pulling her close. How's your day been? Crazy, good, crazy, but crazy. Maya's handling the Johnson account presentation. David called about his book deal, and Grace wants to know if we're free for dinner tomorrow night. What's Grace up to now? She's launching her new nonprofit for financial literacy education. Apparently, our little corporate takedown inspired her to help other people recognize and fight financial fraud. Carter grinned. My sister, the social justice warrior, who would have thought? Everyone except you, apparently. They had lunch at a small cafe in Brooklyn. Emma's choice because she insisted they stay connected to the real world outside their increasingly successful professional lives. As they walked back to the subway, Carter stopped suddenly. Emma, can I ask you something? Always. Carter reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small blue box that made Emma's heart stop completely. 6 months ago, you slapped me in a coffee shop for being an arrogant jerk. That's not a question, Emma said weakly, staring at the box. You challenged me to be better, braver, more honest. You fought for me when I was too scared to fight for myself. You saved my life, my family's company, and my relationship with my sister. Carter dropped to one knee right there on the sidewalk in Brooklyn as pedestrians walked around them, and street vendors hawked their wares, and the city continued its chaotic dance around them. Emma Blake, you make me want to be the man I never thought I could be. You make me believe in love that's stronger than fear, partnership that's stronger than pride, and a future that's brighter than anything I ever imagined. Emma was crying now, not caring that people were stopping to watch, that someone was probably taking pictures, that this moment would probably end up in tomorrow's society pages. Will you marry me? Carter asked, opening the box to reveal the most beautiful ring Emma had ever seen. Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of the woman who saw through all my defenses and loved me anyway? Emma looked down at the man who'd gone from her biggest mistake to her greatest love, who'd learned to fight for what mattered, who'd chosen her over everything his family had planned for him. Yes, she said, pulling him to his feet and kissing him as the small crowd that had gathered burst into applause. Yes to all of it, but I have one condition, anything, the next time you call me sweetheart in that condescending tone, I'm allowed to slap you again. Carter's laugh was brilliant and joyous and full of promise. Deal, but just so we're clear, I'm never giving you a reason to slap me again. We'll see about that, Wellington. Is that a threat, future Mrs. Wellington? It's a promise. As they kissed again, surrounded by the chaos and energy of the city they both loved, Emma couldn't help but think that sometimes the best love story started with a slap and ended with forever. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, the man who annoyed you most in a coffee shop turned out to be the man you wanted to spend your life annoying right back. She thought, as Carter spun her around while tourists took pictures and Grace called to congratulate them. And Maya demanded details, exactly the kind of ridiculous, improbable, absolutely perfect love story she never would have believed in until it became her own. The end.